Welcome back to the Paddle and Fin Podcast Network. We're brought to you by Yak Gadget. For all your kayak fishing accessory needs, go to yakgadget.com. Pelican cases, coolers, and lighting. Go to pelican.com. The 153 Bait Company. For all your hard and soft bait needs, go to the153anglers.com. Now let's get this show started.
Hey everybody, what's up? Ken Morris, if you don't recognize me, and this is episode 2 of the River Bassin Rivals podcast. So today I have Travis Von Neuman coming in to talk about some River Bassin life and just moving water and fishing and kayaking and stuff like that. So if you guys don't know anything about Travis, he has kind of been all around, but I would consider him an Ohio guy. That's where I met him, and we met up with against each other in the River Bassin Trail, and there's some local trails that we've met up and fished against each other, and we've kind of coined the term frenemies in this certain group of river guys that we have. So he definitely became one of those. Definitely a good fisherman, and one of those guys that you definitely see on that roster, and you're like, oh man, like really got to step it up because he's going to bring it every time. So without further ado, I'm going to bring him in, and we're going to get this going. So what's up, Travis? How you been, man?
Pretty good. Just riding out the winter here in Ohio, like you said.
Yeah, back in Ohio, huh? How's this winter treating you after having a taste of living in the South for a little while?
Man, not a fan. Winter was my favorite time to fish down in Florida and Tennessee. So yeah, this is killing me.
A little bit miserable, yeah.
Yeah.
So hey, you get spoiled sometimes, I guess. But welcome back to Ohio. I think I said that it's been probably a year or so since you've been back, but it's nice to see you in the local trails and stuff like that, and get some competition in there. So to begin with, I guess so this is River Bassin, like lifestyle sort of stuff. We primarily, at least I do, and you heavily like to fish moving water and stuff like that, at least enough to compete in it and to be recognized in this sort of region. Definitely consider you a river guy or a river rat. Where did you start river fishing, Travis?
I started river fishing as a kid. Like, I was probably maybe 10 years old with my dad on the Stillwater River in Southwest Ohio, so Dayton area.
Okay.
And then it pretty much grew, from there. By the time I went to college, I had the Hocking River in Athens by Ohio University. So
excellent river to fish. Absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of love for the Hocking River. It's probably, my favorite in Ohio. Just the nostalgia I have there of skipping college classes and going to catch a couple smallmouth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but it was there where I also, kind of discovered the River Bassin trip on a spring break. There's like my second to last year of college. We were trying to figure out what, a group of guys, our OU fishing club, we were trying to figure out what to do for spring break. And, we wanted to go fishing south somewhere. Came across the River Bassin Trail online, and Drew Gregory, he did like a preview for like all these rivers out there on the Panhandle for that tournament. So we figured, screw it, let's just go down there. And we stayed there for like a week, fished, all those rivers that Drew previewed. And then I stuck around to fish, my first River Bassin Trail down there I was on the St. Mark's River in Florida.
Okay. St. Mark. And what year, do you remember what year that was?
Would have been 2014, 2015.
14, yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
That's awesome. Dude, that's an awesome area. I've been down there. It's really fun. Pretty cool to fish. Definitely, Florida's got some amazing waters. It's not just Okeechobee and Kissimmee and, those chains. Like, there's a lot of hidden stuff in that Panhandle that's super fun to fish too, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when I finished college, just looking at jobs, nowhere was really off limits for me. I didn't wife, kids, anything going on, Ohio. And the first job I landed was kind of in that area of Florida. So I got to go live down there for a year and a half and really, really get to know some of those
Explore
rivers.
it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Dude, that's wild. So, we touched on the River Bassin Trail, and this is kind of where all of this stemmed. I don't know if I did a great job explaining this in the previous episode with Tim Perkins. I'm just going to be honest. I had COVID, and my brain was not quite working right. So I honestly can't remember half of the episode, and I haven't gone to rewatch it to be to embarrass myself about it. So if anybody thought I was acting weird, I apologize. But at the core of the show is I've made a bunch of friends and a bunch of contacts throughout the years in kayak fishing and rivers, and I thought it would be really cool to approach some of those people that I've met over the years, and they've all become rivals in these tournament trails now that it's evolved. Like River Bassin has fallen off the thing and off the trail list, and we have a KBF, we have a Hobie, we have Bass, and then there's all the local trails, and it's really, really grown since we started doing this. At least, and it started way before I started doing it, even. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of nostalgic, a little bit of touching roots, and like a lot of the friends that there's a lot of stories to tell. And if people are willing to tell them and get out there, like it's just I think it's a fun thing to do, a little segment for people to enjoy. So if I didn't explain that well enough the first episode, I apologize, everybody. But I can't remember. Do you remember the first time we ran into each other, Travis? Do you have any inclination? I remember, because like my memory is like seeing your name and seeing it near the top. And it always bugged me because I was like, this dude's always fishing river bassins and he's always doing well. So like that was when, like, I've always been ultra competitive and I try not to let that like shine through. But like when Clayton and I started really getting into River Bassin Trail, we did it in, if anybody's not familiar, there was an individual section and there was a team section. So Clayton and I always fished together and did a bunch of stuff together because we entered every tournament as a team as well. So you entered it as an individual, and then you could enter it as a team, and your fish counted for both. So if you did well and your partner did well, you both did well. And so yes, Clayton and I were fishing against each other at the same time, but we wanted each other to do well because we wanted to win as a team at the same time. And I don't remember if you were on any teams, but in the individual, Travis was always at the top. He was always beating us. He was always beating me. Like I felt like I could never beat him. And I just don't remember when that first started. Do you remember seeing when Clayton and I came on the scene? I just can't remember. I just remember seeing your name on the computer screen or on my phone going through the thing all the time. And I don't remember when we actually met.
Yeah. I kind of back at you. The same thing is like you and Clayton were on a team, and I was teamed up with Jim Heinrich in Ohio.
That's right. Oh, Jim, yeah.
Yeah, because I met him at that first River Bassin tournament I ever did. He was at the same campground as me and my college buddies, and we were like, oh, where are you from? And he said, Ohio. And then I was like, oh, sweet, so are we. And he's like, what part? And I was like, Dayton. He's actually from Inglewood, like the same exact little part of Dayton that I was from. So we ended up teaming up the following year. Yeah, so I know the team race was like you and Clayton, me and Jim and Jeremy and Shannon. Yeah. So it was like those three teams were like all vying for the top spots. Of course, after Tim and Lance dropped out, they gave us a shot there.
Yeah, I heard that they ran the racket there for a little while.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So yeah, I mean, it could have been the Parkersburg, West Virginia tournament that I came up and fished. I came up and fished that from Florida. If you guys were there, because the Hocking River was in bounds.
The first one I think that I ever fished was in Columbus when Drew came to Columbus Kayak, the old kayaking store. Yeah, and then Clayton and I did decent. We didn't do great, but we did decent, and we saw how the standings were with the team stuff, and that's when we went all in. And then I think the second one was in Logan in our region. That was, I think that's the second, or no, we did the one in Columbus. That was the first one I ever did, and then that was it was late in the season or something like that. And then the next year we decided to go on in, and the first one was in Logan of the 2017 or I can't remember, but I'm terrible with that stuff. But yeah, the second one I ever did was I think in Logan, Ohio, which is down by the Hocking River in that area too.
Maybe that's what I came up for.
Yeah.
One year it was Logan. 1 year is based out of Logan. 1 year is based out of Parkersburg. I don't know if I think I may have missed out on the Logan one first time around, but I was at Columbus. I remember that. I got like second or third. Did really good.
Yeah. Because that's how I met. Like that's how Clayton and I's team started, was at that Columbus event, because that's when he shattered his kneecap playing hockey. And I had only fished one tournament before then, and I had met him, and then he shattered his kneecap, and he made a post on the internet that was like, I want to fish this tournament, but I can't carry any of my gear. And I was super new to kayak fishing. I didn't know anything about like rivers or getting in spots or doing anything like that. I said, if you take me to a spot where I can fish, because I don't know anything about Columbus or fishing in Columbus areas at that time, I was like, I'll carry all your stuff. So we basically met up. I unloaded his whole truck and loaded his kayak up with all this gear, and all he had to do was hop in, and I pushed him off because his knee was jacked from like a hockey accident.
That's crazy.
So, and then from then on, we just started fishing together, like for river bass and stuff. Like we became a team, and whatever, and the rest is history. But
and you picked it up really quick, like right when you jumped in.
Yeah,
it was. Yeah, you were in the running.
Yeah, it was like it's like fire, man. Like I think we came across it in Tim, and Tim was like, you need to appreciate, like, realize your talent level. And I try to be a bit modest or not think of it like that, but thinking about it, I did start bass fishing in like 2015, 16, and it has come a long way very fast. So I did immerse myself in it pretty heavily. So if you put the time in, it definitely will come to you for sure. So it got very competitive very quickly for me, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to be competitive to if you're fishing tournaments, you're a competitive person to want to compete
at some extent. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So what was if you had to whittle down to like your favorite river bassin moment or story, like trail related, or you can even branch out in just a river bassin style in general, because you've done a lot, you fished a lot of rivers that wasn't necessarily in creeks and streams that aren't necessarily competitive driven. I know that you're like me and other guys, you've been everywhere. You've been in Missouri, Tennessee, anywhere that has moving water, you've tried to fish there as much as you can. So what, I guess, if there is a unique story like that you like to tell, what would that be, if you don't mind sharing?
There's definitely been some stories. My favorite like moment of river bassin trail was I teamed up while I was in Florida. I drove up to Georgia to meet up with Will Clements, and we formed a team and drove out to Missouri, a tournament. It was like on the border of Arkansas and Missouri, like western part of the state. And we had like a day and a half of pre-fishing, figuring out, and just like kind of on a whim, after using gauges and whatnot to figure out what we were fishing wasn't really working. Being able to pick his brain and his mind there, a couple day trip, and then we ended up winning the team side of that tournament out there in Missouri. A guy from Florida and Georgia. Really, I'm from Ohio, but came into their home territory and beat all the locals. So,
and they have some unique territories and some unique stuff to fish out there. I've been out in Missouri and some of those streams. Like it's awesome and extremely frustrating how different each region of the eastern, I would still call it eastern, like you cut it right down the middle, the eastern United States river systems are for bass fishing. Like how unique and challenging each like region in that is different.
Definitely.
Like it's wild. And if you've listened to Drew and I and any of our shows, like those regions all have individual black bass species in them too, because they're completely different water systems for the most part. When you break it down from like the Mississippi Delta and then like, whatever, the one in Alabama Delta, and then, all that stuff, that's all separate ecosystems, and they shouldn't have any, crossover. So they all have their individual, micro bass, black bass species and stuff. It's just wild to think about. You can get so deep into this stuff that's crazy that people don't even realize.
Yeah, that's part of the fun, man. Just the different, species you can check off the list along the way on the rivers.
So what is one out there, I can't remember. Is it the O'Shea smallmouth or something like that? What is that one? Do you remember what that one is? That's out in like Missouri, Arkansas area. That's Neo.
The Neosho smallmouth.
Neosho. Yeah, that's it. Neosho.
I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but
yeah, me neither. I'm terrible at pronouncing things most of the time. Do you think you ever came across one of those, or do you have no idea?
I would have to go back and look at the river systems I fished, maybe, because I still feel like they're not spread out throughout those whole states. I don't know. Not an expert on it, so don't quote me on that. But
for sure.
Potentially, I don't think I would know just by looking at them. Probably wouldn't know
the difference. Yeah, you'd have to like probably pull it up and make it a goal, and then go fishing, and then like look for those details for sure, or something like that.
Yeah, I may have run across one because I fished, Missouri, western Missouri all the way to eastern Missouri, and then same thing in Arkansas. So maybe, but I can't guarantee it.
Yeah. So, would you consider yourself a power fisherman in the rivers and creeks, or do you finesse, or do you want to speak on that at all?
Yeah, I try to be a power fisherman because that's obviously it's just more fun, and it feels like the bigger fish come that way. But I'm better at finesse fishing. If the power isn't working, like within that first hour, I pretty much put it away, and I'll just grind it out finesse fishing because I'm better at finesse fishing, and there's definitely things to improve on. I'm pretty honest with myself. I'm just like my casting. I'm just always like 4 inches off.
It's so hard to cast in a river consistently.
Yeah.
We all act like we're good. You know what I mean at this point, but I still foul cast so many times. There's probably fish that I've spooked because I'm trying to do something fancy and get this spinnerbait or this chatterbait or whatever, in this inch by inch hole in between these limbs, and because there's a perfect current right underneath of it, and I smack the tree 6 times before you actually get the lure in there. It's so because your kayak's moving and the stream's pushing everything, and it's so hard to cast especially if you're on those small creeks that you can literally reach across sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And all that's also probably the issue is my stubbornness and not having very much equipment. So I'll take a 7-foot rod out on a short creek and be trying to whip that thing around when there's bank in the way and stuff. But that's another discussion for a different time. So finesse fishing, I guess, on a river. Do you is it Ned rigging? Because I started finesse fishing in the rivers and creeks when I started, but I quickly moved away from it and went almost to all power and top water for the most part. Do you Ned rig? Do you drop shot? What do you do? Do you just throw a Cinco out there and or do you mind sharing at least something? What's the deal with finesse fishing and the rivers and creeks that we stomp through?
Yeah, it obviously depends on the river. It's kind of evolved over time. Through college, I was real big on just throwing a wacky worm Cinco and just kind of letting it drift weightless. Cast it ahead of where it needs to be and just let it drift out there. Real big on tube, just a tube jig fishing.
Okay.
But yeah, nowadays I do Ned rig a lot. I'll fall back on the tube still as well, but I mean, there's been creeks even at the Hobie TOC. I was way up a creek, and I power fished all through the spot and caught a lot of fish, but it was the last 30 minutes just throwing a Ned rig and just letting it sit there where I caught my biggest fish of the whole tournament. It was 18.5 incher. Wow. So I mean, I definitely love power fishing, and it's definitely a way to catch big fish, but sometimes just dead sticking something small and tasty out there, it'll surprise you.
They get annoyed with that little grub just teasing them.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta eat it. Yep. The hors d'oeuvre.
Yeah.
By the way, congratulations on Lake Champlain. I know I've said that to you before, but now that we're on this platform, if you guys haven't noticed that stuff in the background, this man went out and smashed a smallmouth at that Hobie BOS Open on Champlain. So Smalley's rule, you see it in his name. He went out there and crushed them. I never got to talk to you about it, and I don't know if you want to bring it up on here, but there was this pretty special lure you used out there, wasn't there? Or or is that a
Yeah,
little hush hush?
it's still hanging here.
Oh, you hanging it right off of there. Look at that.
He went into retirement, so it's like the Berkeley bucktooth beaver is basically just a whopper plopper, but it looks like a beaver, and I thought it'd be hilarious to catch fish on it because I like throwing a whopper plopper.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a really good river bait, and I went out there and figured out something. I was fishing the lake, so I don't want to get off topic. And
oh no, that's fine. This is yours. Go ahead. Talk about whatever you want.
Yeah, of the River Bassin part of it, but yeah, I got some topwater bites on like a spook, but it was like the fish weren't totally getting hooked up, and like the weight of like the spook compared to how big the waves were, I just wasn't able to work it great through the waves that were coming through. And I was like, screw it, I've got that giant beaver. Let's put that on there. And it was able to just like dig into those waves, and they just started destroying it. So yeah, craziest tournament of my life.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy, isn't it? Like, cause we're very similar anglers for the most part. Like, I know we just mentioned that you like to finesse, and I'm very much a power fisherman, but like we like to be on the rivers and stuff and in smaller creeks. And we're both from Ohio. You spent a little bit of time in Florida or whatever, but like, I won that Pickwick tournament for KBF last year, and then later in the season you won that Champlain. It's just wild when things turn on like that. Like,
it's crazy. I had no business, competing in that tournament. Mike Iaconelli out there. How many times has that guy fished Lake Champlain in his life?
Yeah,
a ton.
I've never. Same thing. Like, those are the first times I've ever been down by Pickwick, Wilson, and Wheeler. Like, I had never seen those waters before. Like, I had no business beating Drew Gregory. Like, you know what I mean? Like, or Christine or whoever else was, entered in those tournaments. Like, everything turned on, and then it all clicked. And, maybe this is the part where I need to be a little bit more, proud of myself, or like not proud, but like, confident in what I did. But it's still just like when it happens and it's happening, you're just not used to it, I guess. And it's just wild. It's just an absolutely wild feeling.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And congrats to you on that one. I was at that tournament up there skunking and up a creek.
Yeah, dude.
Like, Ken is destroying them.
It was wild, dude. They were just on fire. Just kind of like how you found that topwater bite with your walking bait, and then turned it into that little beaver plopper there. Like, I had a 19-inch just smash a spinnerbait in the first 15 minutes of the morning, and I just threw that all day. I would switch it up with a frog every once in a while. I did catch one of my bigger ones on the frog, but like, it was just spinnerbait all day, just chucking wine. Like, that's all I did. Awesome. So, but I think I explained it in a podcast that I did or whatever, but there's a weird storm front that just moved in and hung. It never actually started raining. It never actually moved away either. That prefrontal whatever, because I think they had storms before, but it had time to reset.
Yeah.
And a new one was coming in, but the prefront just kind of hung for like the whole tournament for me. I don't know if it was the same for other people. Obviously Drew had a good day, but he did a little bit. He was catching smallmouth and I was catching largemouth. We were in completely different areas, but everything just clicked and turned on. And I did have a buddy in a similar area as me. Like, we kind of did fish together, like Jake Horn, and he would have been right up there on that first day and like somewhere in 3rd through 6th, but he kept losing them at the boat, and I heard it. Like, he was close enough to where I could hear it, but we weren't fishing the exact same area. And like, he was like, dude, I can't get him in the boat. I'd be right up there with you. It was wild. They were just munching so hard that day. Yeah. But to get back to your point about talking to lakes, I don't mind if you talk about lakes, because lakes are just the boring part of rivers. So
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
so,
right.
But yeah, so like, is there something that you want to bring up? Is there something about river fishing or the River Bassin life that you like want to highlight, or is there anything like that? We're just here to chat about stuff. Like, do you have a favorite? I know you mentioned going out with Will Clements, like in the Eastern, but is there something like, because you fished with Gene Wilson and done a bunch of different stuff, like, is there anything that you want to talk about that just doesn't get highlighted as much in this new, we're almost like in a new age of kayak fishing?
Yeah. Rivers are awesome is really still down at my core. So, I mean, it's really cool now. Unfortunately, the River Bassin Trail isn't around, where we're going out and specifically fishing rivers, but it is really cool to see on that national level, River Bassin guys from those heydays still doing really well. And I think Drew's definitely brought a lot of light to what you can do in the rivers and creeks, how well he does in the tournaments. But I know just this year, I went to like the Pickwick BOS, and I'm pretty fishing, just driving around creek to creek, and I see Travis Dawkins from Georgia like kayaking up the same creek that I'm looking at. I'm like, oh well, he's got the same game plan that I do. Or you see Lance Coley signed up for something, you're like, oh shit, he's gonna be up a creek as well. So it's made it more challenging, I think, as as more people are seeking out that game plan on the national level. It makes it tough to.
Yeah, that is the biggest downfall, especially if you're targeting those super little creeks and runs and stuff. That there isn't. Territory gets eaten up very quickly. I mean, I've fished personally 14, 16 miles in one tournament before. It's not easy, but if you go downstream and you power fish, you can do it. And, we've done major trips like that before. So, yeah, with more attention does kind of shrink the field a little bit when it comes to those rivers, but it is really, really cool to see like what we do absolutely can compete with what's happening on those lakes. And I hope that those major trails see this, and it's only going to make those events better by being able to thin the field out of the people on the lakes. Let the people fish the lakes that want to fish the lakes, and then if people use our kayaks to get in those smaller waters to what they're supposed to do, and bring some diversity into the competition, like even more so than it already is. So like I really hope that we can get away from cutting out the creeks and rivers in these events as much. And I know that there's probably a lot of behind the scenes stuff that why you can't for certain things or whatever, but I just hope we can keep progressing towards inclusion of them opposed to excluding them.
Definitely. I'd love to see those boundaries open up a little bit, Yeah.
I mean, it was a different time and it was a different event, but sorry if you guys hear my dogs. I have no idea what they're barking about. But like the radius aspect of what the River Bassin Trail was always just astonishing to me. It's just because like it was so simple that it was just a radius, and anything moving that wasn't stagnant water, that wasn't dammed up in a lake, like and it was public, and you could get to it to be public was legal, and that it gave you so much freedom to try to find a hidden spot where nobody, like you could go smash a limit in an hour and then go do it, and then go big fish hunting after that. Like there were just so many options with that sort of freedom of territory to fish.
Yeah, and it's almost the way you kind of have to do it, on river tournaments. I definitely liked it, but it may be tougher for some of those bigger trails to do.
So I do have an interesting story, and I kind of touched on it before we went live here, but Travis and I did run into each other this past year at a local tournament. And it's just an extremely funny story because it was a central Ohio-ish river tournament. So there were certain ones that you're allowed to fish and certain areas that you weren't. Like they were all highlighted on the local trails website for like what was legal water and what wasn't. Literally the night, like the week before, or maybe even the night before, or a couple days before, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go fish this, just see what happens, because I have the advantage of my mom lives literally like 30 seconds from one of the rivers that were in play. And there happens to be 30 seconds from a legal public put-in on one of the rivers that were in play. So I literally just had to drive to her house, sleep for a couple of hours, and get up and go fishing. Like I got there the night before. I just like had all my stuff in my kayak, and I was like ready just to, slide my kayak in and go upriver as far as I could. And if I did good, great. If I didn't, I just visit my mom and then head back home. Like it was just like it worked out perfect. So I'm fishing. So I go upriver. There's two guys that put in at the same time, same place that I was. I talked to them. We figured it out. They were going downstream because I was going upstream, and we weren't going to bother each other, so that was cool. I was like, this is more traffic on this creek river than I thought was going to be right off the bat. And I'm working upstream. I'm catching some fish. I don't know where I'm at. I didn't really turn them in. I didn't really look. I knew that they were okay fish, but they weren't like, I had one good fish or something like that, but my backups weren't that great. And I just keep working. I know that they're in the creek. They're just kind of harder to find on this specific creek. And I'm fishing. I come across this guy and his girlfriend. And he's like finesse fishing. I'm like, all right, it's not a big deal. He's not fishing the same style as me. I'm looking for a little bit, like maybe he caught a few fish that I wouldn't be able to catch now. But I was like, I'm going to be able to, I just told myself, I'm going to be able to pull some fish that he missed. There's no way he's fishing for the same fish that I am. Like, I'll be able to pull a couple. And I get past that guy, and then I don't know, I catch another decent one or something like that. I don't remember the specifics of it, but then I see another kayak and like a paddleboard or something like up around the corner. I'm like, man, what? This? Too many people know about this already, I guess. Like, this is getting crowded. And then I see the paddleboard or the inflatable board come around the corner, and it's freaking Travis's girlfriend coming around the corner whipping this. She was fishing in it too, which is great and awesome. Yeah. And then I was like, I thought I recognized her because I didn't recognize her like right away. But I was like, there's no way this paddleboard girl is by herself. I was like, there's just no way she's paddling through this creek by herself. And I get a little bit closer and get just around the bend just to see around the corner. And there's freaking Travis Von Neuman coming down the waters that were coming to be the end of my day. And I was like, all right, well, this is all trash now for me because he's definitely the guy before. And then now Travis is coming through. Like, this is just screwed up. Yeah. So, to get to the end of the story, I passed Travis, and I said I knew I needed. At that point, I did look and turn the fish in and knew where I stood and I don't know if I recognized that the dude that I just passed was up there too or not, but I definitely knew Travis was right up there. And Travis and I were kind of like battling back and forth a little bit after I started checking my phone, and I needed one good fish or it didn't matter. So I was like, I need one more good fish. I'm just going through stuff that Travis did. I have to do something. So it came time to where it was like, I need to turn around to go back to my takeout to get out on time. And I was like, doesn't matter now. So I'm just going to keep going upstream. And if it takes me 3 hours to get home and I don't catch a fish, like whatever, I either have to do this to try, or I just am, in 6th, 7th, 8th place or wherever I was. So I branch off this little like creek. This little feeder section. I was like, there is absolutely no way Travis went through this. It's too skinny. Like you have to like drag your kayak through it. He probably floated around the big bend trying to hit the cut over there. I was like, there's a good cut, but he probably fished it. I'm going to take my chances and go up this other direction. And it couldn't have been 2 feet deep, Travis. It couldn't have been 2 or 3 feet deep, but of this little section that was coming through. But the thing was it was on a bend and it was undercutting 4 trees that were right next to each other. So there had to have been a big old hole underneath of it. And I ran my whopper plopper through there, and this, whatever my last fish was in 1819, whatever it was, came out from underneath the tree and just crushed it. Maybe it was a spinnerbait, I can't remember, but it just crushed it. And then this is the craziest part is now I have a half hour to get this fish turned in. And I don't have service. I didn't remember the last time I looked at my phone to have service. So I have to turn around and start paddling back downstream and looking at my phone every 30 seconds to see if I have service to turn this fish in to see if I've either caught up to Travis or I had passed him. And I'll if you want to tell, what's your version of this story? And we can talk about the fish. I don't care about that. It was just a wild, like out of all, like there was like what, couple thousand miles of rivers to fish.
Yeah.
In this tournament.
All of the Columbus rivers were in bounds, so which is a lot. There's 3, 4, 5 different rivers that kind of run through in like east and west of Columbus. So there's a lot of stuff in bounds. But it was like, did we go 1, 2, 3 in that tournament?
We did, yeah.
And the other,
and the other guy, I didn't say in my story. Other dude that I passed earlier caught a 20-inch smallmouth in this creek. Right. Yeah. And I tied him. We had the same exact length, but I got second place because he had the tiebreaker with a 20-inch fish. And then Travis was in third, right behind me on my heels with something super close. So the 3 people fished the same probably 5 miles of river out of like thousands of miles available, and they took 1, 2, 3, and then in this little spot. So
same,
like what?
Same like 5 mile stretch of river.
Yeah, because I ended up meeting back up with Travis at the end of it. And he shoveled me down to my car so I could get out of the river because I still had like 2 miles of river to go, but he had a takeout that was closer to where we were. So he ended up doing me a favor and driving me down to get my truck, so I didn't have to do the last 2 miles on the creek in my kayak after I finally got some service and turned that fish in. So what's your perspective on that story? Like in the morning of like not knowing that anybody else was there, like let's hear your half of what happened.
Yeah. So I'm there with a girlfriend. Where we put in, there isn't really anywhere to leave a car. So we had friends help us by, essentially running the shuttle for us. We left my car down at that takeout where we ended up, me and you got out and I took you down to your car. And then we dropped off all our gear in the put in. So me and the girlfriend are going down, catching fish, doing all right. I'm checking the leaderboard, seeing that I'm battling with you. And then about midday, we were really taking our time and just pulling all the fish we could out of every spot. She was throwing just like a rebel crawl crankbait on her paddleboard, and bringing in, little 12 inchers. And then we were out of our kayaks, like waiting, in her paddleboard, really fishing the spot hard. And then around the bend coming upstream was the other guy and his girlfriend. And, I was kind of like, all right, let's get back on board and start heading downstream. We can't really let them pass us because it's such a small creek that like, if he passes us, he's going to have the first shot at everything up ahead. And I was doing well enough knowing that me and you were in a battle. And, I forget exactly. She wanted the sunscreen, which was in my kayak. She asked me, okay, can I put on the sunscreen? So I was like, oh, are you kidding me right now?
Right now?
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I don't want to be a total competitive jerk here in the moment. Let me dig through, find the sunscreen. We'll be polite. We'll let them pass. They passed us, and right in the next like deep hole, we hear all the yelling. It's a 20. We even hear him yell. It's a 20-incher. I'm like, oh my god. She even brought this up like last week. She was like, I'm really sorry about that, like sunscreen. Now I know. Next tournament, if I've ever fished with you again, if you say we got to, get up and go, just to go, because. Yeah. Odds are I probably would have ran into that 20-incher, or she would have.
Yeah, one of you would have had a chance at it minimum.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, well, but it was still cool how it shook out.
And from now on, though, she's got to have her own sunscreen on that paddleboard. Leash it, glue it to it. I don't care. Like,
why do I have?
She's on her own. Yeah, why do you have the sunscreen? You have a long sleeve shirt on and a hat and a hood. And all of the appropriate gear to fish in a tournament all day. Like, why did you have the sunscreen? That doesn't make sense. That's on you, man. Keep your own. Give her a backpack or something. Like, keep your own sunscreen.
It was her first tournament. She
that was jokes. You took. I mean, the fact that you were taking her on her first tournament, and you were right up there in the competition for taking the win on that tournament. You were one fish away, and that dude essentially stole that from you when this sunscreen happened. No. I mean, it's amazing, dude. Like, taking somebody out on their first trip, and you're still slamming fish like that, and you're able to organize everything. Like, that's awesome. You helped me out at the end of the day, because you helped save me some time from paddling a couple extra miles. So definitely appreciate that. And that's the kind of stuff that you create with this lifestyle. Yeah, we're competitive and we want to beat each other, but we're river fishermen at heart, and to help somebody like shuttle and get their job done safely at the same time is ultimately important too. So it's awesome. I appreciate that. And I thank you for that memory in that tournament that we had. And it's just something that I probably won't ever forget. So, it's just a fun, awesome time.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to, just pretty much say, it's more about going out there and, catching fish with some friends, and, if you can do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then at the end of the day, we had to go pick up our trophies or whatever, which it's actually this one right here is my second place trophy. That's from that event, that big green one right there.
Yeah.
We're like texting, like, I think it was Nada, like the guy that was like, we were texting like, we're on our way, like, like we got stuck, like we're so far away, like, we can't. It's monsooning at this point. The storm came in and started raining like at the end of the fishing day, and Columbus, like, traffic was awful. We didn't show up to like check in until like 2 hours later, and the one guy stayed in the parking lot to give us our trophies and like our awards and stuff. So thank you, BKFT and Nada, who stuck around to make sure we got our stuff. So appreciate that, guys. Thank you for your dedication to running your events and dealing with yahoos like me and Travis who go fish at the end of the earth and do that stuff. All right, man. Do you have anything else you want to share? I think we can wrap this up unless there's something else you want to go over. I mean, you can also use this time if you have anybody to thank or to appreciate or anything like that. Any shout outs, Smalley's rule and all that stuff.
Yeah, man, Smalley's do rule and Rivers rule. But yeah, no sponsors, pro staff, any of that stuff.
All right. Well, look, he's open, guys. So if any of you are listening to this, looking for a good river fisherman to represent you, maybe you send him a message or something. I don't know. He might use your stuff. He might not. But he's available. And he's won a Hobie BOS. So that means something. Well, Travis, thanks for coming on. Awesome episode. I'm sure we're going to compete in some tournaments against each other, whether it's this year or next or however long in the future. But appreciate you coming on, sharing some memories and some of the River Bassin life, man.
Awesome, man. Yeah, thanks for having me. Keep it going. Good to have some river stuff to listen to.
For sure, man. All right, guys, take it easy. Paddle and Fin Podcast Network, River Bassin Network, all that stuff. Listen to Drew and I. We're going to start our live shows soon. This is probably going to air after our live shows start, but we're going to pick it back up in 2022 with our shows, and we'll keep you abreast of everything that Drew's doing in his crazy world. So see you out on the water, man. Have a good one.
Yep, you too.